Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now commence the formal part of the evening. In life, and particularly in sport, we talk a lot about leadership. Many of us in both refer to leadership as a position or a role. I have a different view. My view about leadership is that it's about actions. If you set the standards, if you display the behaviour, then others will follow. You don't necessarily have to have a formal role or a position. But in saying that, all of our inductees tonight have been in traditional leadership roles, either as coaches, administrators, captains, or leading other parts of our sporting groups. As we hear about their achievements and their stories, I'm sure it'll resonate with you that all of these people have absolutely outstanding backgrounds, great careers, some unfinished, but certainly they've displayed the actions required, which has set the standards for those who come later. And I know there's a lot of younger players here, many club presidents, coaches, so I'm sure the messages will get back. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to announce that the first inductee into the SSNA Ovens and Murray Football Netball League Hall of Fame for 2026 is Nick Conway.
Nick Conway grew up a proud and passionate Wodonga supporter, helped, no doubt, by his father Tony being a Bulldogs player in the 1950s. But his impact as a player came at the most recent club to be admitted into the Ovens and Murray, Wodonga Raiders. Conway played his first senior match for the club in its final season in the Tallangatta League when known as the Demons. The following year, the Raiders were born, with Conway part of the new breed, playing under inaugural coach Mark Turner. Success wasn't instant, but step by step, the Raiders kept improving, playing in their first finals campaign in '95. Conway, a well-established senior player, when Raiders took the big step to premiership contender a few seasons later. The ultimate reward came in '98, when Raiders went one better than a grand final loss 12 months earlier. Ovens and Murray Interleague coach Bob Craig also identified a role for Conway in the all-conquering representative team that created history in becoming the first league to win 4 successive country championship titles in the late 90s. Conway was elevated to Raiders captaincy in the early 2000s when they hunted hard for a second flag. He was also Raiders under-18s coach in the twilight years of his playing career. Conway became the only Raiders player to reach the 300 senior match milestone in the O&M, earning life membership at both club and league level. Upon retirement from the O&M, Conway coached Mitta United in the Tallangatta District League before returning to the Raiders with a stint as president. Nick Conway, a standout inductee into the Ovens and Murray Hall of Fame.
Well, congratulations, Nick. An outstanding career, both as a player and as an administrator, and we can talk a little bit about some of your numbers. There's only 21 or 22 players in the league's history, so starting in 1893, that have played more than 300 games, so Nick joins that illustrious crew. He's one of the few players that has played in a premiership, been captain and then been president. So there are many things that he's achieved that others have not. But what I'd like to do first, Nick, it was mentioned in the introduction, and it's great to see your mum and dad here, Tony and Monica. I'll talk a bit about your dad later because he's been involved with a couple of other of our inductees as well, and because of his age, he's probably got some memories that we don't have. But a Bulldog legend himself, but you grew up as a kid around the Bulldogs, but ended up at the Demons.
So I'd used to walk from my house, which is opposite the Carriers Arms Hotel in the Conway Funeral Home. For people that are familiar with that, I'd walk to Martin Park and watch training. I'd be there at every single game. I just couldn't get enough of Wodonga Footy Club. I'd go with Dad and watch games on Saturdays, and then Mum and Dad were heavily involved in business that took them away from being able to go to the footy on a Saturday, and I'd be beg, borrow and steal a lift to still get to games as much as I could.
Growing up, obviously Raiders weren't in the Ovens and Murray at that stage, so you're involved with the Demons. So when we talked recently, you talked about being involved with many firsts with the footy club, and the list is quite extensive and it's quite extraordinary. So what I'd like you to do is to share the transition from Demons, and I know we've got a lot of ex-Demons players here, which is fantastic, that transition from Demons to Raiders, and share some of those firsts that you're involved in.
Yeah, well, Wodonga Demons were formed after a club called Kaganya folded, and about 7 or 8 of those guys formed Wodonga Demons in about 1975, I think it was. Clearly they were improving all the time too. Wodonga was growing, like there's 40,000 people in Wodonga now. When Dad went to school in Wodonga, there was 6 people in his class at St Augustine, so things have certainly changed. Wodonga had an enormous amount of talented young kids that couldn't get a game for Wodonga Bulldogs. Some people with foresight, many of them with Wodonga history. Dad was one, John Perry, Bill Mooney, John Casey, Mark Schlink, Frank Richardson, a really big Wodonga name. Yeah, they didn't like seeing all these kids change clubs. So we knew that we had to evolve as a club. So Wodonga Demons had previously been playing on Martin Park 2 and really just operating out of the back of Cliff Robinson or John Wink's station wagon. That was our change room or storeroom as it was. The Wodonga Council found a new ground, which was Birralee Park. And when Birralee Park was built, there was no Birralee Tavern, there was no Birralee Shopping Centre, so there's nothing in between Melrose Drive and the footy ground. But we relocated there in 1984, and I actually played in the first game on the ground that day, which was the fourths. If people familiar with the Talanga League will know that it was 4th 18. Leslie, who's here, was the coach of that team. Vinnie Glass was in the team. He played in the Raiders Premiership. Stephen Robinson, he's here. He also went on to play senior footy. So I was lucky enough to play in that first game. It was also the first time we wore red and blue, because we were aware that one day if we came into the Ovens of Murray, we'd be clashing with Benalla, who were red and white. Then just by fluke, I was always at the right age at the right time. We won the 4th Premiership with Les in our first year. We won a 3rd Premiership. I sort of mentioned in the video, I had a longer absence from school for a period, and Bert Hollins gave me my first senior game. I went to training on a Thursday, just asked me to hang around, picked me. I had 5 in a row. The last couple of games of the year I played. The last game was Wodonga Demons versus Barnawatha. So I was in the very last game that we played in the Talanga League. Morris Eames and Bert Hollins had been sent off for the second time by Lefty Wright. I'm not sure if Lefty's here today, and both of them just said, we're not going. And they stood there. Scott Headley and I were on the bench, so it was right in front of us. We're thinking, what's going on here? And they refused to go. I think there was a standoff for 5 minutes, and they stayed on the field, play resumed. So that was our last game in the Talanga League. Then the following year, we've entered the Ovens of Murray, and here I am again. I'm the right age, I'm 18, thinking I was always going to go and play for Wodonga. But as I turned 18 and sort of came to another level of football, my club entered the Ovens of Murray.
So runners up to Albury in 97, but 98, Darren Harris, but a few tough years. Just briefly describe to us, and all of those people you mentioned from the early Demons and Raiders Day, I've seen most of them here tonight. So the feeling around the club must have been quite extraordinary in 98.
Yeah, well, it was amazing. Well, we were always growing, so it was always exciting for us. Even in 1989, when we didn't win a game, it was new to us, so it was always exciting. We'd go on to play against great players from other clubs that we'd only read about. Most of the guys had never seen them before. With no wins in our first year, 1 in our second, 2 in our third, 3, and then our first final series under Peter Coakley. But Darren Harris came in 97, and he was an amazing coach. He brought 4 guys over with him from West Perth, Jeff Valentine, or it might have been the 4 of them came, Jeff Valentine, Ben Stewart, Rod Winner. They've come from a good culture. They'd all been involved in a premiership over there. Darren Harris had been involved in premierships wherever he'd been, Bendigo, Wodonga, West Perth. He clearly knew what was expected of a team he coached, and he coached it really well. We always knew what we were supposed to do. Simon Bones, Stephen Clark, Craig Smith, we had great leaders, and we had some great younger players as well. Honestly, it just all fell into place. Not everyone would be familiar with all the names that played with us on that day, but as a team, it was amazing.
I noticed quite a few of those fellows are sitting up the back, and I know some of them fairly well. The Raiders have had a very strong history with the military, and there's been a lot of fantastic ex-service people involved with the club. So no doubt they helped with that culture, but you went on and became captain for 7 years, so that must have been fairly special. There were a couple of hard years during that time, but I want you quickly to talk about that, and then my second part of that discussion is after you came back from Meta, you took over as president, and as those of us who remember, Raiders had appointed Darren Creswell as the coach, so obviously that had some challenges. Creswell goes about things, he's fairly focused on his footy, so just as captain and then being out of it and then coming back as president, that must have been an enormous learning curve and a difficult transition perhaps.
Yeah, well, I guess all the senior roles at a footy club have evolved. I was very lucky. I played under great leaders. Yes, Simon Bain was our premiership captain, but yeah, there were no egos. No one had to challenge anyone because everyone knew this is the way we did it, and everyone was prepared to do the right thing. But yeah, as we've probably got out of that period of the 90s, yeah, the player culture changed a little bit, expectations changed a little bit, and that's natural. And same with being a president. So when I walk around and I see some of the past players that I played against who are presidents at club now, I just admire them for getting stuck into it because I know how much difficult it was. It probably wasn't as hard when I took on the presidency, I think it was about 2015 or 2016, as it would be now. But every role in a footy club's got a challenge, so I can only say well done to everyone who puts their hand up.
You also coached the under-18s for 3 years, so there's not much this man hasn't done. But my last, it's sort of a two-part question, and a couple of the players did ask me to remind you that you've still got the 1998 Premiership footy, so they're still looking for it. And your mum and dad want to know why the school gave you an extra 2 weeks school holidays when you're at Assumption College. So maybe that's a story you can talk to us about later. So Nicole was involved with the netball, kids with the footy. And as I said earlier in the introduction, some of our people, inductees, are still involved. When I caught up with Nick, he was overseas playing in an international Masters footy tournament. Amazing. It made me feel young again to think that a man like this could be still playing international footy. So quickly, your family's involvement and your involvement with the Masters footy, particularly at international level.
Yeah, well, I guess my whole family have always sunk their teeth into wherever we've been. So when I was too old to get a game at Raiders, we went out to Mitta in a flag under Phil Packer, who's here tonight. But Nicole took on the netball coaching out there, coached in all grades, and we've come back to Raiders. Obviously, I've taken on the presidency for a period. Then as our kids got a little bit older, it made it hard to do those roles, but Nicole got more involved in the netball side. So again, if you're involved in a club, it's better to put your hand up than sit there and criticise. So yeah, my dad and mum were heavily involved with the juniors, and they're involved with all the Doolans who are here tonight. And Nicole and I are the same. If we're going to go to the footy on a Saturday, we're going to help.
And the Masters, you're still...
Yeah, well, Ron sort of threw me a little bit when he talked about they haven't played for 36 months. I'm about 4 weeks, to be honest. And I've never stopped. It's funny, Chuck Headley's here. We both went up to Bright together. I played in a seconds flag at 47. I'll be honest about that for the first time. Chuck's a generation older than me, and he was our best player at the time, but we made so many friends at Bright, and many of whom we still talk to every week, and that sort of led into going over to Bali in June every year, which is it's a 2-day tournament of over 35s, 45s and 55s, but it involves 365 days of group chats and phone calls leading up to the event and the day following the event. It's amazing, great fun.
Excellent. Well, I'll hand over the microphone to you to make your thanks. So well done. I've enjoyed our chat.
I would like to thank the O&M Hall of Fame committee for bestowing the honour upon me. I really appreciate it. I got a call off Bobby, who I've known for a long time. Yeah, as people who'd seen the video earlier would be aware that I used to wear his number on the back of my jumper. I had a lot of Wodonga Bulldogs numbers on the back of mine, and his number 10 was 1. So it was great to get a call off Bob. Monty, you've stolen my Tony Conway joke, so I've got to scratch out a few lines here, unfortunately. Well done to all, congratulations to all the other inductees as well. I played against Brad, Corey and Tim, so know firsthand that they were champions. I'm very aware of the Doolan's history through the eyes of my dad. Dad coached Vin had the Doolan family in the juniors and had Vin in Wodonga reserves before he progressed to senior footy. And Dad rucked against Norm Hawking, funny enough, so we've got a synergy with everyone being inducted tonight. Thanks to Nicole and my own family and Mum and Dad for just indulging my love of footy. Like, I'm an absolute footy head and have been forever. I drive everyone crazy, but never once have they sort of discouraged me from being as silly as I am about it, other than being a bit loud when Collingwood play on a Friday night on telly. But yeah, how silly it is that a bloke at 50 years of age packs his footy gear on a Saturday and runs to play in Bright Twos or goes and has a run with the Murray Crays, but no one's ever told me, yeah, you're a dill for doing it, and I really appreciate that they've allowed me to do that. A big thanks. I definitely wouldn't be here without my teammates and coaches. I haven't won a Morris Medal, I'm very aware of that, but it's a real collective. I've got so many friends from footy and so many great teammates. We wouldn't have had the amazing times that we shared without each other and being such great friends. I was lucky to play in a really strong era for the Raiders, but winning was just a small part of it. We did spend so much time together, it was amazing. I'd have a coffee with Simon Bone midweek, we'd all be at the Stump Hotel on a Friday night putting our tips on. Play Saturday, recover Sunday, we'd be at the Stump for a palmy Sunday lunch. We just couldn't get enough of each other, and that's why people like me and Brendan Way, who played a lot of games, wanted to be at the club so much because there's so many good people around. Footy brings people together. Pato touched on other clubs. I went to Mitta and we've got Phil Packer and Michael Hodgkin here I've made friends with. I've got guys from the Murray Crays here tonight, guys from the Barley Nines and Chuck Edley, who we played hundreds and hundreds of games together, and winning a twos flag at Bright as a 47-year-old. You wouldn't believe how silly we were, ringing each other up. Leading into, I don't think one other person would have cared in the slightest, but we were just that excited, and that's what footy does to you. I've also been lucky to make a lot of friends from opposition clubs. I speak to Dasher Spencer regularly, Mick Wilson regularly. I'm on the phone to Bruce Calder a fair bit about Wodonga history. If I see something he should put on the Wodonga page, or he'll ask me a question to go and ask Dad. I just love it. And now I've got kids playing Sunday footy, and obviously I go and watch the Raiders on a Saturday, just bumping into so many people that I really look forward to seeing all the time and having great chats to. So that's fantastic. The calls and messages I receive from people involved in the Ovens of Murray, it was honestly just so overwhelming. I just couldn't get back to everyone. It's umpires, past players, current players, past committeemen. So I thank you all for making the effort to reach out. And just here's where you might have to indulge me a little bit. I've done something different tonight. It was really important to me, and Craigie mentioned this when he rang me, because I was trying hard sort of not to accept this, but he sort of said the club would be really happy to have someone up here tonight. And I thought that's absolutely right. So I bought a table myself, and I filled it with some people who haven't all been around the club in recent years. As you get a bit older and ill health and just your interest levels drift, but they're really significant. So on that table tonight, I have got Leslie, who I mentioned, who was the first ever coach of the Wodonga Demons Force, and my long-time junior coach. So Les coached so many players who went on to play senior footy, so I hope he recognises his part in having someone up here tonight. Bill Mooney, Mark Schlink and John Casey are here. They were part of committees that worked so hard. Our beautiful social rooms at Raiders were built by volunteer labour nearly entirely. They were on those committees, and they were also really instrumental in getting the Wodonga Demons to join the Ovens of Murray, which, if you think back to how hard that must have been, the effort they put in was absolutely amazing. It's a shame Frank Richardson couldn't be here to share that with you as well. Merrill Brown and Joan Robinson were both invited tonight. Joan's gone to hospital today, unfortunately, but Merrill's here. They were part of our ladies' committee. They're both life members, as many of the ladies' committee are, so that reflects what a great effort they are. We've got Graham Lester here, our premiership team manager. He's not as well known as guys like Ross Reed around the comp or Simon Plunkett, etc., but at our club he's amazingly valued, and I hope he's happy seeing a Raider up here tonight. Matty Lee was a trainer at Kaganya, Wodonga Demons and Wodonga Raiders, and know what a thankless task that is, Matt, so glad you could be here tonight. Sue Truan's representing the netball club. Our netball's on a high at the moment. Obviously our A grade are
reigning premiers. Sue's helped in whatever role necessary. I'm so glad that she got to see us win a flag last year, and I'm so glad she's here tonight. And then lastly, just representing the supporters, got a couple of funny names. Jake Kowski, I saw him coach our Wodonga Demons thirds on Martin Park. I saw him play Wodonga Demons, and then he would barely have missed a game with the Wodonga Raiders up until a couple of years ago. He's here tonight. And Davey O'Prey would never have missed a game from probably the time Simon Bone came to our club, went on all our triple A's, was quite often best on ground, including the time he took a horse on a triple way that won at 16-1 on a Sunday at Canberra, and 52 of us were there, so he's part of Raiders folklore. But just wanted all of them to know that they're representing other people that did similar roles to them in our club, and I hope they feel a part of myself standing up here, and they can appreciate the efforts that they've put in, and that's why someone from Wodonga Raiders is up here tonight. So thank you to everyone.
So just recapping 302 senior games, 7 O&M League representative games, 1998 Premiership player, thirds coach for 3 years, president, Raiders Life member, League Life member. I think he's an outstanding inductee into the Hall of Fame. Well done, Nick.